Welcome to the Phase Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Terrell Humphrey. Over the last half a decade, I've produced over 893 podcast episodes. And throughout this journey, I've been learning more about business and learning more about the problem I'm solving and bringing you along the journey so that way you can see what's working, what's not working, and what's working for me. So this topic is going to be so incredible because today we're talking about making your podcast unique. So if this is your first time here, welcome. Make sure you got your pen, make sure you got your notebook, because today's gonna be a phenomenal episode. So first thing first, making your podcast unique is a challenge. When I started podcasting a half a decade ago, I didn't even know what's called podcasting. I picked up my phone, I picked up my tripod that wasn't even tall enough. It was short. I had to put 3 books underneath it, and yet it still was short. So I had to angle the camera so where I could be in the frame, in the camera. Throughout this time, I've learned that when you make your podcast unique, you are showing your personality. You are showing yourself and you are making a difference. The reason why that's so important, because when you show yourself, when you show your personality, people start to attach to you. People start to learn about you. People start to connect about you. See, I didn't recognize people were connected with me until people started to say I was connecting with you. This whole time I'm like, how do you know somebody's listening? How do you know if somebody responded? How do you know if I'm even making an impact? Throughout the journey, the impact started to make because the uniqueness of myself started to come out. And as it came out, I started to understand that my podcast was becoming unique. So first thing first, point number one is that point number one, have to be yourself. Now, yourself. What's going on, everybody on TikTok? What's going on? What's going on, everybody on Instagram? What's going on, everybody on other platforms? YouTube, X, Facebook, Twitch. When you have to be yourself, you learn how to show up as yourself. Okay, what does that mean? In other words, a lot of people say you have to be authentic. You have to be authentically you. But in other words, just to make it simple, just to keep it simple, you have to be yourself, both on camera and off of camera. How you act on camera is how you're supposed to act off of camera. How you act off camera is how you're supposed to act on camera. When I started a half a decade ago, I started as trying to, look at everybody else and see what they was doing to see, how can I do that? How can I be like them? How can I communicate like them? And so I started my podcast in the way that everybody else started their podcast. And it was so challenging for me because throughout this time, I'm literally learning how to podcast, yet at the same time, I was learning how to be someone else. I wasn't learning how to be myself. I was learning how to sound like another podcast host, another podcast platform. And what this did for me is that it taught me something. It taught me that there's only one you. There was a quote that said, there's only one you, so why not be the best that you can be? And when I read that quote, I was like, it gave me permission to be myself. It's not the fact that I was trying to be like anybody else. I just didn't know how to be like myself on camera. And throughout this time, I literally learned the importance of growth, the importance of focus. You see, making your podcast unique is learning how to be yourself. I'm going to come back to the screen right quick. You have to be yourself. In other words, you have to gain experience being yourself. And what I used to think is that a lot of people not going to want to hear what I'm saying, not going to hear what I'm talking about. But in reality, they do. People listen. I just didn't recognize people were listening. So when I start to learn how to be myself and show up more consistently, how to be more unique and how to make my podcast unique only came from me learning how to be myself. I had to learn how to be comfortable on camera. I had to learn how to provide value. I had to learn how to educate. You see, all of this came from me growing into the person I am today. If I didn't grow, I wouldn't have learned. But to make your podcast unique, you have to understand that it's okay to be yourself. Create experience being yourself. And what this does is that it helps you show up as yourself. In other words, when you are trying to be like someone else, there is no one who will listen. Whereas when you be yourself, you got people who will follow you because you are helping them with a particular problem that you're solving. In podcasting, to make your podcast unique, you have to stand out from the crowd. As you stand up from the crowd, you have to be okay with standing out from the crowd. You see, as I started to learn, hold on. As I started to learn to make your podcast unique, you have to understand that you have something to say. Just because it doesn't come off as smooth as everybody else doesn't mean what you're saying is not valuable. In fact, what it means is that what you're speaking about, you're actually making a difference. Because one day somebody's going to come to you and say, that message that you delivered, that podcast that you had, that conversation that you held, it helped me. I saw this video the other day. And it was on X, on the platform X. And as I'm watching this video, it was it was a comedian, and he was going around touring, going to different places and having different shows. It was a person in the audience, and she was like, "You might not know this, but you helped me. You helped me when I was in my darkest moment. You helped me get my confidence back. You helped me through laughter." You see, many platforms are different, yet when you make your podcast unique, there is always someone watching. There is always someone listening. There is always someone that's taking notes. And I'll tell you this, it took me a long time to understand that people were actually watching. Chris, what it do, man? What that did for me is that it helped me be more unique. You see, when you make your podcast unique, you're understanding that you're solving a problem. There are many people out there. There are many people who has a podcast. In fact, there's over, according to Podcast Stats, there's over 4.5 million podcasts out there. So you're telling me if 4.5 people try to be like every podcast that's out there, where is the uniqueness? I'll tell you this, that uniqueness came from you understanding more about yourself. It's not the fact that there are a lot of podcasts out there, and there's a terminology called this. Hold on. It's called saturation. In other words, that's too many people. I'm gonna put too many. Then I'm gonna flip the page and I'm gonna write the word again. SATURT. Saturation equals too many people. In other words, there are too many people trying to be like the next person. When I hear the terminology saturation, I often say, how's it saturated? If it's people there, if it's people doing the thing that you're looking to do, that means that there's something there. Hold on. Let me come back to the screen. That means that there's something there. It doesn't mean that as you are putting yourself out there, that you're doing the same thing like everybody else. What it means is that just because there are 4.5 million podcasts out there, it doesn't mean you can't stand out. What it means that you have to find out how to be unique. When you learn how to make your podcast unique, your podcast will become unique based off your personality. Your podcast will become unique based off you learning from others. Your podcast will become unique when you understand that your uniqueness lives in you. Shout out to the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the video, "What's the Life's Blueprint?" He proceeded to say, if you're gonna walk, hold on. He say, dang, what'd he say? I just had it to my tongue. Hold on. Oh, you have to be your own somebodyness. In order for you to be your own somebodyness, you have to believe in the somebody that you are. He didn't say that second part, but I said that part. But what I'm saying is that when you make your podcast unique, you are literally creating an experience. When people listen to your platform, when people listen to you, when people come to your podcast, they're literally listening to you. What this does for you is that it gives you some sense of like, man, this is actually working. With Failures Knowledge Podcast, I had to understand like, wait, hold on, there's something here. There's something here, and I'm learning what the thing is. The thing that I'm learning is how to be unique more consistently. It's not the fact that the consistency is a problem. It's more so I had to learn how to be okay with showing up as myself. As I showed up as myself, let me tell you this. As I showed up as myself, I started to become even more unique. Because I'm not trying to be like the next person. And it took me back to when I was playing football. I was playing football, and there's a lot of football players out there. If I'm trying to be like the next player, how do I stand out? Whereas if I just do my best and I show up as myself and I work hard, eventually I will have an opportunity. That's the same in podcasting. In the podcasting space, to make yourself unique, to make your platform unique, you have to be yourself by doing more work and being okay with the process. There are many people out there, but just because there are many people out there doesn't mean that your podcast is not making a difference. What it means is that your podcast has an ability to make a difference. But you have to be okay with your uniqueness. You have to be okay with being your own somebodyness. You have to be okay with showing up as yourself. Hold on. See, I just grabbed the wrong water bottle because I'm getting into it, and it's starting to get hot. I tell you this, it's not the fact that there are 4.5 million podcasts out there. What it means is that you have to find a way to stick out. After producing 893 podcast episodes, I started to learn that I was in the podcast production business. And then when I start to help people with their podcast, I'm helping them build their confidence on camera so they can show up being unique, so they can show up as their own somebodyness, so they can show up as themselves. At the time, I didn't recognize it was the confidence that I was building because I was learning what I was doing. So what I'm saying is that this whole time I've been trying to build a podcast business. I've been building the business without knowing that the business that I was building was a podcast production business. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how you say it. What matters is that you say something. To make your podcast unique, you gotta be okay with saying something. I tell you this, hold on. When you say something, people will listen. But when you don't say nothing, people won't listen. And when people not listening, now your confidence is lowered. You see, I started to learn that my confidence was building after every episode. Because after every episode, I got better. After every episode, I learned better. After every episode, I started to learn what podcasting consisted of. Now, to this day, I'm still learning. Now, don't get it wrong. I don't understand and know everything, but what I do know is that when I show up, I learn something new. Making your podcast unique only comes from commitment. When I was in the Marine Corps, now I want to do a moment of silence. Every time I speak about the service, I want to do a moment of silence for what's going on in the world right now. So we'll do a moment of silence right now. Thank you. What I like to do is whenever I talk about the service, I just want to incorporate that and based off of what's going on in the world right now. So send a prayers to all the troops and thank you for all your services. So when I was in the Marine Corps, the biggest thing that we learned is that if you're going to become a Marine, I was a Marine. If you're going to become a Marine, you have to commit to the process. The journey is going to be long. The work is going to be draining. It's going to be challenging. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean that you can't do it. What it means is that you have to be okay with the process. As you are okay with the process, you start to learn, you start to grow, you start to develop, you start to understand. But in podcasting, it's the same concept. You have to be okay with the journey because the journey is what's going to teach you the lessons. Hold on. When your podcast is unique, your podcast goes on a journey, right? Your podcast goes on a journey, and throughout this journey, what happens many times is that you are constantly evolving. In fact, I'm constantly evolving. I'm going to say the podcast journey I've been constantly evolving. And what this does is that it demonstrates the lane. This is called the lane that I'm in. The lane that I'm in is called focus. When I'm focused on podcasting, when I'm focused on having conversation, when I'm focused on being unique, I can stand out even more because my commitment is around podcasting. I'm not all over the place. At first I was going from business to idea to idea. Nonetheless, I was learning what I was doing. It just took me a long time to understand what I was doing. Nonetheless, as I started to learn what I was doing, the lane that I was developing, the lane that I was creating, the lane that I was in was all around podcasting. It was all around podcasting. If you go back and look at some of my videos, everything I talk about was around podcasting. I just didn't know how to charge for it. I just didn't know how to make money from it. I just didn't know how to monetize from it. You see, my thing wasn't making money from it. My thing was making an impact. As I start to make an impact, people start to say, man, you know you can get paid from that, right? And I'm like, you can? They said, yeah, bro. I'm thinking you can only get paid on social media. But in reality, you can get paid from having a business around podcasting. Podcast production is one of is the key ingredient to helping people build their confidence on camera. Because now what we do today is that we help real estate developers build their brand through podcasting. And we do that by giving you peace of mind, because all you have to do is come and sit down and we record everything for you. In addition to that, we take care of everything after the recording. So you're telling me if I'm able to help launch your podcast, manage your podcast, and produce your podcast, how come you wouldn't have a podcast? You see, to make your podcast unique, you have to understand that you have something to say. Point number one that we just went over is that you have to be yourself. The next point that we're going to talk about is this, and this one is critical. Don't do it for the money. There's a saying that says, the money will come. And I'll tell you this, there's another saying that I created, the money has yet to come. Isaiah, what it do, man? The money has yet to come, but it has yet to come because I didn't understand the business side of it. You see, when you do something with your passion, instead of the money, I'm gonna put dollar signs, your passion speaks more. Whereas when you're doing it for the money, you can't even see it. When you're doing it for the money, it shifts. And by it, I'm saying your perspective shifts. And throughout this journey, it's going to be hard. Throughout this journey, it's going to be challenging. Throughout this journey, it's going to be overwhelming. Like the first question that I always get whenever I'm talking to somebody about their podcast is, how do you make money from it? I'm not going to be doing this for the heck of it, but how do you make money from it? And I'm like, great question. At this time, I do not have that answer for you, but I will get back to you because I'm not sure what that answer is. Nonetheless, as I start to understand everything that I was doing, to make your podcast unique, you have to follow your passion first. I'm very curious. I ask a lot of questions. Whenever I'm communicating with somebody, I ask a lot of questions. In addition to that, I tie my story in and inform them about who I am, what we do. What that does for me is that one, it helped me learn a lot. I learned a lot. I learned how to communicate, learn how to connect with others. In addition to that, I recognize that I'm being positioned differently. Because people don't ask questions. Then when I ask question after question after question to have the conversation, to learn, it's like a shift has already happened. Because to make your podcast unique, you have to be yourself both off camera, both on camera, because you have to be okay with being yourself. It's a passion that comes out as I'm podcasting, as I'm communicating with others, as I record videos. It's a passion that is displayed. It's a passion that is communicated. It's a passion that can't be faked. My passion can't be faked because my passion comes out when I communicate. So whenever somebody communicate with me, they talk about podcasting, it triggers my attention. It gets my attention because I'm listening to what you're saying. You might not be talking to me, but if you say something about podcasting, I'm listening. To make your podcast unique, you have to follow your passion. I actually did a podcast with this guy named Dean Akers. I got it on my page on Failures Knowledge Podcast. You should actually go listen to it. It's phenomenal information. When I did the podcast with him, or before I did the podcast, when I met him at Spartan Incubator, and he had a pair of shoes on, and the shoes that he had on was from his kids. This is called shoes. And he proceeded to explain to me, he said, listen, my kids gave me these shoes. And whenever you want to, excuse me, hold on. He said, whenever you want to do something, make sure it's your passion. Make sure it's your passion, because if it's not your passion, you won't enjoy it. And I asked the question, I said, why should you focus on your passion? And he proceeded to say you should focus on your passion because it will give you energy when the moments are low. When things are not working in your favor, it will give you motivation to get back up. When things are not going as you planned that they will go, when you have the passion behind it, you can get back up and do it all over again, a day in, a day out. Hunter, what it do, man? What this does for you, hold on, there we go. What this does for you is this. It gives you a purpose. When you have purpose, you have meaning. When you have meaning, check this out. You have, it wraps round to passion. The passion that you have comes out. After producing 893 podcast episodes, those are a lot of episodes to produce. Nonetheless, the development, the lessons, the growth, the education has came from me understanding that to make my podcast unique, I have to be okay with doing the work. As I do the work, I have to enjoy the work that I'm doing. As I enjoy the work that I'm doing, I have to be okay with the time and effort that comes from that. What happens is that I start to understand that I'm becoming more consistent. As I become more consistent, my podcast is becoming more unique. Brandon, what's going on, bro? It's becoming more unique. And I tell you this, it's becoming unique because I literally and I'm learning how to be myself more consistently. So now when I showcase my personality, when I showcase myself, when I showcase everything that I'm doing will be the lesson, because failure is knowledge. You can't grow if you don't fail. I've had countless amount of interviews and I asked them, what has been your biggest failure? And they tell me moments when they was low, moments when it wasn't going in their favor, moments when it wasn't working. But they found a way to turn their setbacks into success. So when you follow your passion has to be the focus. Because when it's your focus, it comes out as you helping others. It comes out as energetic. It comes out as enthusiastic. Because you can't fake passion, but you can fake trying to just do it for money. And it's taken me over a half a decade to learn that you can actually make money from it. Some might say that's commitment. Some might say dedication. I would say that I'm focused on the journey because I know what my passion is. It's incredible to see when people doubt themselves to get on camera, to start recording themselves. And then when they start to record themselves, they literally gain the confidence to say, hey man, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And then when they go to the next step of investing into the equipment, of doing more often, having interviews, it's a complete transformation. The podcast production helps you transform from doubt to having confidence to podcasting. When you make your podcast unique, you stand out even more. Standing out is not as easy as it seems, but it's not as impossible as it comes. What happens is that now you're learning how to be yourself. As I start to learn how to be myself, people start to connect with me. People start to make jokes around everything that I was doing, which is absolutely fine. Why? Because people are listening. Shout out to one of the mentors. I forgot who said this, but when they said it, I asked a follow-up question. They say, you never know who's watching, but always give it your best so the people who's watching can be entertained. I said, ooh. And I tell you this, you have to follow your passion so that your passion comes out when you're not present. Hold on. Your passion has to be the focus, because to make your podcast unique, you can't do what everybody else is doing, which is trying to be like everybody else. What happens is that you have to learn how to be yourself. As I started to learn how to be myself, hold on. As I started to learn how to be myself, I saw a shift. I saw transformation. I saw growth. I saw education. I saw lessons that helped me understand what I was doing and what I need to do more of. Last point that we're going to talk about is this. Point number 3. Hold on, make sure. Point number 3. Keep podcasting. I did a podcast. Hold on. Before I go there, just to recap, the first points that we talked about was that you have to be yourself. Next point that we talked about is that you don't do it for the money. Follow your passion. Last point that we are going to speak about is that you have to keep podcasting. I did a podcast a couple last year, and when I did the podcast, this is what happened, right? He was like, because he was in recruiting. Shout out to Bill. And when I did the podcast with him, he said this. He said, when you get into recruiting, when you get into recruiting, stay recruiting, because you never know the lessons you're going to learn. What I gained from that, I'm like, hold on. A lot of people say, like, once you get in business, stay in business, because you never know what you're going to learn. Different words, same concept. He was like, yeah, exactly. Here's the meaning behind that. You never know what you're going to learn, because every day you show up, every day is going to be different. As it's different, you start to understand everything that you're doing. Okay. As I showed up, podcast after podcast after podcast, I literally became more unique, because showing up is the biggest thing a lot of people forget. 90% of podcasters stop podcasting after episode number 3. Why? Because it's hard. Why? Because it's not an instant return. Why? Because it's not instant gratification. Why? Because you don't make money as soon as you start, unless you're a celebrity, but you have to work towards that. And when I became more unique, I became more focused on everything that I was doing. It gave me the confidence to keep going, because my podcast became more unique as I showed up. The more I showed up, the more unique I came out, because I was able to stand out. It's not the fact that there are over 4.5 million podcasters. It's more so what percentage of that are showing up consistently. When you show up, you're literally beating 90% of people with your podcast. Because to be unique, you have to do it often. You have to do it consistently, and you have to do it in a way where people will literally say, I see what you're doing. People reach out to me now because everything I talk about is around podcasting. Everything, I'm more clear now. I'm more clear today than I ever have been, because every time somebody comes to me, it's all around podcast. You know, it's not. The messaging has changed, but the overall industry has not, because I was trying to figure out what messaging I wanted to deliver. Nonetheless, it was all around podcasting. So as I saw that, I've learned that it's around podcasting, and now that I'm focused on being unique, I just have to keep doing more of podcasting. And now I'm okay with doing more, because I'm not just doing it for fun. So when you keep podcasting, you develop a business around conversations, because now you have 2 different customers. Yeah, 2 different customers. You have, I talked about this in the last podcast. You got the free customers and you got the paid customers. Shout out to the Venture Mentor VMT, Venture Mentor. I forgot what the T stand for, but you got free and paid. The free people grows audience. And the paid grows business. How can you serve two different customers? The people who come up to the platform, come up to Phase Knowledge Podcast, I'm not charging them to interview. I'm literally learning about their story, but I'm giving them the full experience of the podcast production. I actually had this happen. I thought about this the other day. I did a podcast a couple of years ago, but then one of the people who were on the podcast, that was like, yeah, man, I'm thinking about starting my own podcast. But at the time, I was like, for real? I didn't even recognize that people will want to start their own podcast. I was just interviewing. So the free is not bad because the free can lead to paid. I even had a conversation with them and didn't go through with it. Nonetheless, it was like, oh, I'm starting to figure it out. What this did for me is that it helped me understand the difference between the two. In the mentorship program that I was in, they explained, well, you're going to have two customers. One is going to be free, one is going to be paid. The one who's paying you is the one who will fund you growing everything that you're doing. But until you get the payment, you have to grow your audience. You have to grow everything that you're doing. So as when they start to pay you, they start to see your results. I did a podcast and I sent out the what is it called? My data, and I sent it to them, and it showcased where I was at with my podcast. Where cities where I was in, what countries I was in. It was surprising to me because I've looked at it, but I never had anybody ask about it. And so when somebody asked about it, I literally looked at it and it was like, oh, I'm in all these different places. What if I just keep going? I will be in many different places. And now it's just like, oh, that's what I was missing. I was missing the consistency. Just because I didn't get paid from it, I stopped doing it free because I was trying to figure out what I was doing. I was inconsistent with it. I became inconsistent with it. And the results showed. Nonetheless, as it showed, my podcast is still unique. But now as I do it more often, and not stopping to do it, things are going to change. Instead of me reaching out to people to be on the podcast, which I still do, people are reaching out to me. But when I started a while ago, nobody was reaching out to me. But see, when you keep podcasting, you learn what's working, what's not working, what can be improved, what needs to stop. I'm listening to this book. It's called Scaling Up. Some things will work, some things won't work. But in the book, it explains that you have to have a team meeting around what's working and what's not working and why. When he said that, I was like, oh, that makes sense now. Like it didn't make sense before, but now it does. I can't be in business if I don't keep showing up. As I continue to show up, I learn how to sell. As I continue to show up, I learn how to market. As I continue to show up, I learn about leadership. As I continue to show up, I learn about finances. As I continue to show up, I learn about systems. As I continue to show up, I learn how to follow up. As I continue to show up, I learn about CRM. As I continue to show up, I learn all these informations around business that I can start applying today, that it makes me more unique because it's not just a hobby anymore. It's not just a hobby, it's a business around podcast production. So now when you get the experience, you are experiencing a business. You are experiencing a process. You are experiencing steps that has been improved and developed. Why? Because to make your podcast unique, when you keep showing up, the uniqueness seep through the cracks. There's over 4.5 million podcasters, but that doesn't mean everyone is operating as a business. Some of them are operating fun as a hobby. I used to be as a hobby, as fun. But over time, I started to learn, like, wait, what if I actually make this a business? And then that's when I start going to shout out to the program Action Zone. Action Zone is a program for veterans, first responders, and service members looking to start their business from idea, concept to monetizing it. Then I start going to different programs, and I actually learned about it in 2022, learned about business in 2022. But over time, I got the breakdown of it. Then I go to Kaizen University to learn about business management. Then I go to the Spartan Incubator program to learn even more. Then I go to different programs, buy different courses. You see, the education doesn't stop. The education just starts to get better. I have a better understanding of it. As I continue to show up, the understanding gets more clear because with the podcast production, where we help real estate developers build their brand through podcasting, It only comes from learning how to put the right steps in place and operate the podcast as a system instead of a hobby. Operate the podcast as a business instead of for fun. Operate the podcast as a networking event instead of just doing it for fun. And over the years, I've learned that if you continue to show up with your podcast, your uniqueness will come through. So just to recap everything that we talked about, point number one is that you have to be yourself. When you start your podcast, learn to be yourself off camera in addition to on camera because your personality will show. Point number two, don't do it for the money. Yes, I understand. I get it. You want to make a living. But until you learn the passion behind what you would like to do for the money, it's not going to come out good. Last thing that we talked about was keep podcasting. When you start your first episode, continue to podcast, continue to record, continue to put yourself out there because you never know the lessons that you're going to learn. So, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that follow button, hit that like button, because if you are an entrepreneur, leader, thought leader, or a podcaster, and you're looking to build something and you feel like you're alone, this channel, Failure Knowledge Podcast, helps you know that you're not alone because I failed more times than I can count. Yet I still get up and apply the lessons from the failures because failure is knowledge. Lastly, don't be afraid to fail because failure is knowledge and you never know what this failure is going to teach you in order for you to grow. I appreciate y'all and I'll see y'all on the following one. That was good. That was real.